Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody to our ninth personal development seminar this year. We're really pleased to have you back with us in the end of June. And today we're going to be talking about how to be an effective public speaker and enjoy it. And this is really important for our personal development skills as we go through our careers. And it's also something that sits in part of our apprenticeship standards for many of you on the call. We have communication skills in part of our standards. So it's something that we'll address through apprenticeships as well. But it's a great way of developing our careers and personal development to get comfortable with this. I'm Jenny Pelling, and I'm the Director of Apprenticeship Development and Diversity for those that haven't been on the call before. And I'm joined by Ross McWilliam, who is our brilliant Mindset Pro expert speaker, just setting up there because you are. And pleasure to hand over to you today, Ross. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I know what most people are thinking. What time do we finish? We'll finish around 1:45. And if people want to ask some questions at the end, or even as we go along, that's really important, that it's not just us delivering to you, it's with you. Okay, so that's the whole theme that we've always tried to encourage with you guys. So how to be an effective public speaker and enjoy it. Do those two things go together? I don't know. Let's have a look. So we're just talking about what we'd like to do with you guys today, and always make you feel safe and secure. Somebody mentioned they were a bit under the weather and not putting the camera on, or don't want it to be too interactive. That's fine. And anything we do makes you feel a bit wobbly. Please, communicate that with us, but we'll try and be as interactive as possible to make it feel safe and secure for you. We'll have a nice follow-up slide at the end, any further information you might need from what we've talked about today. So, our biggest fears. Okay, let's look at our biggest fears. The New York Book of Lists, I read this in 2005. And when I read it, I couldn't believe what it said. It said, out of our 10 biggest fears, the second biggest fear was death. So there's something that was worse than death. Anybody guess what that was? You can shout it out or write it in there. It's an interesting one because I couldn't believe when I read it. So second biggest fear is death. Here we go. The biggest fear is speaking in public. So people would rather die than speak in public. It's not rational, is it? And if you look at this one here, a little pie chart there, public speaking did 28%, heights, spiders, failure, snakes, clowns. So it is public speaking that's one of our biggest fears. And it's something that if you can approach it with interest and curiosity and nice anticipation, it will give you great rewards. Okay, great rewards. So what happens when we mention public speaking? They have this fear. And just very briefly, when we have this fear, an intense, extreme fear that can happen in milliseconds, that's in our brain, the chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol are released. And it's released from the adrenal glands in the kidneys, and it can transfer to the prefrontal cortex on our heads there. And so intense and so rapid, I've seen people can't remember their own names. It numbs you, it blocks you, it paralyzes you. Sometimes it's not that extreme, but it's so effective, you can forget things, mumble things, and become like a shell of a person. Now, I don't want to start in a negative. That's the worst case scenario, but we can learn to control that. And the first step of learning to control it is by being aware of it. Okay, it's a natural response. And if you've got a natural response, the more we practice something, the more ingrained it becomes and more easy to remember, to do, to deliver, to perform. So a lot of what we're talking about today is recognizing this, but practice will make us much better at something. Okay. There's a guy called Dr. Rob Young, and I read this book about 15 years ago, and it struck a chord with me. He said, initially, you might be terrified to speak, but after accepting your fate, that's a nice way of putting it, you may start to prepare for it. You may then deliver and think you've survived or died, okay, but you've got through it. It's ended. But you may feel that you enjoyed it and need to do more. A step further, this is what I think, you need to speak in public, as this is who you are, and this gives you a buzz. So it's not as if people say to me, are you nervous, Ross? I don't even think like that. I just think I've got to a stage in my life now when I'm not speaking, I don't feel like Ross. So I need to speak to feel like Ross. And the ability to communicate will facilitate success in different ways. Now, I'm just going to take off for a second. Jenny, you've got an experience you've had in speaking in public. Do you want to share that? And if people want to get some inspiration or not from that, let's just have a listen.
Yeah, I mean, the first big public speaking thing I had to do was in the Ukraine, actually, it was an international association of prosecutors, and I had an audience of UK and international people, and it was being translated into different languages. I was petrified. I'd never done something that large, and the thing that happened to me was my legs went to jelly. They were shaking so much that I thought I might even fall over on the stage. And then it sort of transmitted to my hands and they started to tremor. And then finally my voice started to wobble. And that was the worst I've ever done. But after that, they've all been better and I enjoy it now. But there was one moment there when I thought, I want to be swallowed up and I want this to end. But as you say, I think I survived it and it didn't get any worse. And in fact, it got a lot better and now I do enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a nice story, isn't it? We're not saying that everybody's going to go through that hump of learning. It's going to be terrible. That's going to be good. You know, public speaking, the ability to speak in public, you know, everybody at birth is born in terms of the set of different genetic codes, but it's the environment and it's the experiences as we grow older that makes us a better person, or in this case, a better public speaker. So we're all starting from ground zero, you know, so don't think, oh, I'm genetically worse than somebody else. I don't buy into that. A lot of people don't buy into it either. And I've been speaking for 35 years now. And I had a similar situation to Jenny, but I did something that Jenny didn't do. I decided to avoid the situation. And you might have related to this, people on the course now, because every Wednesday at PE college, I had to give a lecturette, but every Wednesday I was ill. It was a cold, it was a bad knee, it was a bad ankle. It was an excuse. And eventually when they collared me and said, you must speak, Ross, I got my notes and I put my head down, and there's about 30 people in this room, and I wasn't bald, and I put my head down, they couldn't see my bald head, and I just read it from some paper for 10 minutes. I didn't really stumble over my words, but I wasn't communicating with people. It was just a process. But when I finished, I was so happy that I didn't wobble or collapse. And I thought to myself, when I've survived it afterwards, I thought, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to run away. I'm never going to underperform. I'm never going to be scared. And that philosophy has taken me a long way in what I do. That was at 21. I'm now 61. But my first proper official gig was in front of 15,000 people at Preston North End when I was commercial manager, and somebody didn't turn up to do the microphone on the pitch. So I thought I'd do it. And I was a little bit nervous, but I was more anticipating what I'd feel like afterwards if I didn't do it or if it went wrong. I wanted it and I wanted it to go well. And it went pretty well. It's so well, they gave me that job for the next 5 years. But there's an opportunity to take rather than a threat to be seen. And I think that's interesting. But one final thing you might be interested to hear is that when you speak in front of your peers, it's often much harder to speak in front of people you think are judging you than just a massive audience of 15,000. And you know, when I'm in front of smaller audiences, that can be more challenging because they can see you more rather than 15,000 in the stadium. But when they're your peers, that's something that can really wobble. And I've seen it in staff room where staff members can't speak in front of the staff. So it's anybody can be influenced that. A couple of stories here to think about. Can we get to survive it, or can we get to thrive and enjoy it? That's the interesting question, isn't it? So the importance of public speaking: to be successful in life, you don't have to be able to speak in public, but it helps. Yeah, if you can communicate a message in public, you're on a good flight path. When you communicate clearly, with confidence, with authority, because you know your stuff, as a gatekeeper of knowledge, in an empathetic and a real, authentic way, then you become a more credible, accepted professional. It's not always the smartest people who get to the top of the professional ladder. In fact, some very smart people never get that high. But being able to communicate puts you at the front of the race. So if you're sat there now thinking, well, I'm not that smart and I can't public speak, try the public speaking, develop it and grow it, and you might go faster with that tree than just collecting knowledge all the time. So what are your barriers? Let's ask them, our audience today, Jenny, if they've got any barriers to public speaking. What's the few things that really gets them down? I mentioned before about peers. You mentioned before about that physical response to something, from the legs to the mouth, to the words, to the memory. And everyone will put some barriers they've had to public speaking. Is it your personal confidence? Is it that it's gone bad before? Is it that everybody else is better than you? Or what is it? Let's put some in the chat box now. Let's have a quick think about our barriers, because it's no use us building a house today if we've got some gaps on the foundation. Let's have a quick look at some of our barriers. Let's be aware. Awareness, whether this is true or not, it's your experiences. And one of the things I talk about in life is about, you might feel a certain way, but where's the evidence to support that? And when often there's no evidence. So people have this viewpoint about something really bad, but there's no evidence to support it. Can you read them out to me, Jenny?
Yeah, there's some good ones coming in. Fear of judgment,
So that peers, yeah.
being challenged in public.
That's an interesting one. There's a great tip for that one, you know. The great tip to give yourself a bit more time is to repeat the question. Either you repeat or ask them to repeat it, gives you a bit more thinking time. Or you say, it's a very good question, let me think for a second. And you don't always have to answer it at the same time. Such a good question. Can we answer that at the end, please? That'd be fantastic. Now, that you might not want to do that. I've obviously used that sometimes, not that I've been intimidated, but I was on a good flow and I wanted to pick it up later on. But that simple thing of ask to repeat it, or you repeat it, or tell them it's a good question, that takes a sting out of a little bit and gives you some thinking time.
Some more coming through. Yeah, Ross. Anxiety. What could go wrong? What could people think? I'll read you three more. Presenting information to people more senior and knowledgeable than you.
Yeah.
Fear of judgment. You know, what will people think? And embarrassment. What if I mess up my words?
Yeah, embarrassment is an interesting one, isn't it? You know, I'd almost be tempted to be embarrassed than to have regret and wish I'd taken opportunities. You learn more by your failures than your successes. And I can honestly tell you that. So when it happens, it doesn't go so well. If you're a motivated person, the next time you'll do something different to make sure it goes better. The other one picking up there, speaking to people more senior, you know what, you might always get people more senior in a room. It doesn't mean to say they're better. And sometimes when I was doing my teaching qualifications and going for job interviews, I had a big board in front of me. I also sometimes on the new curriculum changes, I knew more than the people in front of me. And so they were asking me questions that they didn't know the answers to. So don't always think they know the right answers all the time. Okay.
One more actually. I think it's worth picking up. Really good point made. Dialect and accent and how that's perceived.
Well, that's an interesting one. You're a southern lady from Hertfordshire. I'm a northern man from Preston, Lancashire. And you know, some people think the northern accent doesn't come across as educational. And if you look at Ken Clark, not the politician, or Ken Robinson's probably better named, the guy in education who's a northerner, but he speaks very eruditely about education issues globally. And his accent gives him that edge, I think. So I think the accents, for me, are not critical. For me, what is critical is how well you speak in terms of pace and enunciation. So rounding those vowels out, if you're a northerner, when I used to speak in Portsmouth and Southampton, if I spoke a bit more slowly, A's, the I's, the O's, the U's, they come out more clearly. And I think just taking your time to speak, so you've got that clarity. And I think that overcomes some of the accent. Okay, it's a good question, that one. I like that one. Okay, a lot of it, our barriers, is self-esteem and confidence. You know, self-esteem, how much we value ourselves. And as I said before, we learn more from our mistakes, and things are going to go wrong. Things aren't going to go the way you think they are. But if you can get up again and show that you're worth something and develop that confidence not to be scared to speak, to think, to say, to do, then you've always got a chance to improve all the time. And I think a lot of development and growth comes from valuing ourselves, not in an egotistical way, in a developmental way. Often people talk about the imposter syndrome, where you think people know more than you. So in that question before, senior people in the room, they might know some more knowledge, but you might put it in a very clear way, in a very up-to-date contemporary way, and you can almost recognize their strength by showing that as a vulnerability for you. So vulnerability is quite a strong component in my speaking. And I often say to people, I don't know all the answers. And if I don't know something now that's important, I'll look it up and find it. So actually recognizing vulnerability then becomes a strength. Remember that you probably know a lot more than you think you do. And being on this course now shows me you've got the motivation to learn, to grow, to develop, to perform better. So I think that the imposter syndrome is an interesting one, but it's about stop putting yourself down. It's about where is the evidence to support that I'm rubbish, I'm a failure? Where is the evidence? And when I ask that question, often people can't answer me. It keeps you on your toes. If we think we're brilliant, we're the best things in sliced bread, maybe we get too arrogant and we lose the authenticity bit of it. So I think a bit of imposter syndrome now and again is all right. It's about getting trusted feedback from people. People and you trust you, they haven't got an axe to grind, they'll give you some honest feedback, personal and professional. And we're always a work in progress. And if I get to 71 in 10 years' time, I'll probably be a better speaker at 71 than I am at 61. Okay, when most people retire. So that's my long-term goal, to keep speaking. Right, I often talk about the confidence curve, and that will make no sense to you whatsoever at the moment. But if I make it blank and then say, confidence, this ability not to be scared, it goes on a trajectory. So self-esteem, confidence on one angle there, and time. And I put it into 4 quadrants. So the first top left is somebody who's oblivious to they don't think that they're really bad. They think they're quite good, in fact. And when they start off, they might have some good successes initially. But then, because we don't have the preparation and practice and that feedback, which we're going to talk about in a second, very quickly, they become then consciously incompetent. They know that they're not that good. And that's where the confidence takes a hit. They're behind the 8 ball, they're really struggling. But as I'm going to talk about today, with the things we're going to mention about this practice and performing and evaluation, we can become very conscious that we're competent. Now that's a bit of a struggle, and it's fine, it's necessary, but our confidence starts to grow up. Eventually, we get to that thrive flow stage where we don't know that we're very competent, and we do it. And as Jenny said before, you get to enjoy it. And then you need to do it more. That's me, that establishes my personality. So I'd like to think if you've had some sort of errors and false starts, maybe you've gone into that conscious incompetent stage, but today is a good step to get to the next one, the conscious competent. And some of you people, I can almost guarantee it, you'll be in that flow stage before you know it. Okay, so that's a little trajectory. Little hits along the way, we can work with that. And I often talk about 2 concepts here. If you want a steady life, stay in that blue zone. Little learning, nice and comfortable, nice and cozy. Cups of tea, chocolate biscuits, Coronation Street, yeah? If you want to stretch yourself, go into the green zone. That's what you're doing now. And nobody wants to ever go, what Jenny mentioned, that Kiev, into that red zone and really struggles. If you're going to go into the red zone, and intentional or not, take from it what you can. And as I said before, you'll learn more from your failures than successes, but we don't want to live right on the edge all the time, because that'll wear us out. It'll make us almost against public speaking. We might step into it intentionally or not now and again, but it's all about in the green zone, ready to learn. And what we often talk about in teaching was prepare, demonstrate, and feedback, or plan, perform, evaluate. You've got to prepare your speeches. You've got to be prepared then to demonstrate it, and then take the 360-degree feedback, and it carries on and it goes round. And that's why I always say we're a work in progress. Yeah. And you could have a good speech ready. One audience loves it, another audience doesn't. This is why we're always doing this: plan, perform, evaluate. So again, it takes time. It does take time, but stay with the program. Let's look at some performance strategies. Let's get into some detail now. Okay, so the performance strategy, I think I've got 4 levels here. Some of the basics that you'll need to consider. Okay, you've got to believe and have motivation, yeah, that you're going to benefit from this. Good or bad, you're going to benefit. Say to yourself, think, I have got some experience. People, they're going to want to listen to me. I've got some they want to hear. And I'm going to be brave. I'm going to own the room. Okay, that might seem for some people arrogant, but I'd rather on that side of the curve then the lower side where I'm fearful and scared of what's going to happen in a negative way. So it's about that starting off position. I've got something to share. Remember all the preparation. And I often say to people doing exams, they get very nervous. Well, you don't want to put all those last 12 months of study and revision down the drain now because you get a little bit nervous. And I think, wow, it's like X Factor when people go on, they get very nervous. Well, you wanted the application form, you put yourself in there, you practice for years and years and years. Now the chance comes, grab it with both hands. So think of all that hard work. And, you know, on an obvious one, on the basic level, is check the microphones are working, check people can hear you at the back of the room. Have you got the tech support on standby? And I did this once online last year where there's no tech support and my slides wouldn't work. And we got through it. It was an experience. I learned more from mistakes, but I won't do it that way again next time. And lighting and noise, windows open and things of that nature, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's our basic level. That's our framework. Now, some of you might be listening now and watching this and thinking, it's all about my nerves, Ross. I can do it. I just get nervous. So we've got some stuff here that I'm going to go through. I'm going to take it off in a second. We're going to go through that now. I'm going to show you myself and go through some things with you. So going back to that last slide and starting off with this slide, when you go into a room, chemically, fight or flight, the body's deciding, do I want to run towards this or I'm going to run away from it or am I going to freeze? And there's another one called form, playing dead, like a rabbit in the spotlight, the headlights. So I look around the room and that's telling my body, I'm not going to run away. Yeah, I'm not going to fight. I'm just nice and relaxed. It's same thing, chemicals, just chill out. I don't need too many today. Okay, I'm nice zone. So looking around the room physically is a great sign. I then do what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where I breathe in and then I breathe out and squeeze my finger and thumb together, and that anchors that thought. So initially, I'm just clearing my head. I won't do this in front of the audience. I do it on my own. And then I probably think about a thermometer. If my nerves are a bit too high, I breathe in, and then I breathe out. I squeeze my finger and thumb together, but think of a thermometer coming down in temperature. Yeah, almost blowing it down. Okay, I got excited. Let's calm it down. Let's keep the adrenaline down a bit. Let's just relax. And let's get what's called the serotonin, the calming chemical, back up again to calm us up. So I want that middle ground. I want to be ready to go, but I don't want to be so hyper that I can't function and remember and activate all my qualities and skills and experiences. If I get too low, I get apathetic and I can't be bothered. So it's that middle ground. So that breathing one, either thermometer or think about a time when it went well last time. So you think, it went well last time, did it, I can do it again. Okay, another one, we have the butterfly. I'm going to change my camera a little bit. In our stomachs, we have 90% of serotonin receptors. This is what calms us. And sometimes we call it the butterfly, where you breathe in and breathe out and touch your stomach, and that calms it physically. So you're saying to your body, I know you're there, serotonin. I need to start producing a bit more. It's okay. I know what I'm doing. I've done it before, done lots of preparation. Just going to spend a few moments doing this. And that touching, that visceral touching, thinking and breathing together actually just calm it down. Some people go for the butterfly hug if you want something like that as well. It's an interesting one. And the final one I often use is the distractor. If you're very nervous and you've got a big presentation to do, always throw something out as a quick distractor that puts the attention off you onto them. Like, thank you for being here today. It's terrible weather outside. Give yourself a round of applause for getting through that terrible rush hour weather or whatever it is that's relative and appropriate to the audience, but push it back to them rather than be looking at you. Like, just change direction a little bit. I often said at Preston North End, I had 300 people in the room. I'd say, we've got lots to get through today. Well, let's just give it up for the sponsors today. Give them a round of applause. And it just took the pressure off me. And I checked the microphones out, I looked around the room and I went, yeah, here we go. And it just gave me a bit of a chance to catch myself. Okay, let's go back to these presentation stuff. Doing really well for time as well, which is good. So again, you can have this presentation afterwards. I know Jenny's going to make it available for you, and you can pick up the detail of that. Okay. So let's go on to level 3, specific delivery now. Okay. There's got to be a start, a middle, and an end. Yeah. And when I was doing my teaching practice in the 80s and 90s, the thing that was drilled into me, never go over your time slot, always leave a bit to spare for those questions, those things in the end we can't foresee. So never ever go over. And a sign of a bad speaker, or just give me a few more minutes, I'm just going to fill this in. It's not a good sign. But have a start, a middle, and end to work to. And I think that's where your practice comes in, of working to make sure that you've got enough time to deliver each part of it. But remember, people are going to ask questions at some point, as we did before. So hopefully I'll finish on time today. There's a pressure on me, isn't there, today? Slow eye contact around the room. So not being rushed, looking at people, not more than 2 seconds. 2 seconds, after 2 seconds, it becomes a stare. Yeah. Under 2 seconds, it's a nice little move around the room. Don't be scared to use the pregnant pauses, as I call them, the tumbleweed moments. When you've said something sometimes quite complex, let them process it. I once saw some year 9s public speaking, and they were very confident, not nervous, knew all the stuff. But they spoke so quickly, I couldn't process the information. And they were a bit too good. And I think they need to slow down a bit and use those pregnant pauses more. Don't try and be funny unless you think you're very funny. I'm not funny. I might have a few, not jokes, but I might use the audience in some ways, but it took me a long time to get to that stage. Keep it simple, keep it boring. Yeah. You know that acronym KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's how I started off. And then I started getting a bit more confidence and grew it from there. Yeah. Colin Powell, he passed away last year, the commander of the armed forces in America in the Iraq war. And he talks about, tell them what you're going to tell them. So we start off, tell them what you're going to tell the audience. Yeah, I'm here today to tell you this. Then you go and tell them. And at the end, you tell them what you've told them. It's a nice and short, sweet sort of 3 levels, start, middle, and end. But it's telling you what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. It's good memory jerker as well. Okay, doing really well, guys. Hope we're keeping up with this. Level 4, communication and message specifics. Your PowerPoints, notes are freelance, not more than 4 to 5 points per slide. The problem with PowerPoints is, if you don't know your stuff, you constantly turn your back in your audience to look at your laptop or look at your screen. And once you start losing engagement, they think there's an inauthentic approach to it. So I was talking yesterday, and I was looking at the audience, and I knew all the stuff on the screen, and I could talk about it. Maybe I didn't get it all the right order, but it didn't matter. They were impressed by that level of knowledge that I knew it was authentic. Use appropriate images to break up information, and be careful, you know, when you're handing out things to support your speech, that it's very clear printed. You've got enough. In fact, you've got more than enough, because there'll be always somebody who hasn't got one, and that'll distract you. So get more than enough, but also get someone to help you to do that as well. As a speaker, be greedy. That's what you're doing as a speaker. You're not going to be a multifaceted person, being a handout person, IT person, getting an extra chair for somebody else. Be a bit greedy for your time. Slower voice, talk tumbleweed moments, contact I'm repeating myself already. That's not a bad way to do things. Where to look and body language options. We'll come on to body language in a second. Again, be careful of reading from a screen. And I like to use metaphors and stories. So already I've told you some stories about Preston North End and my college days. And I think it buys people into that. And people can sort of subtly relax when you tell them a story. It's not like learning from a screen. So learning from a screen is quite tiring, especially if it's online. In an audience, they like to say, I'm going to tell you a story. It's their chance to sit back a little bit and relax. And then they can push up next after that point and go back to the screen. Keep it simple, stupid, as I said. I know a guy who's an international public speaker, and he uses lots of music and images to sort of consolidate his points. More often than not, it doesn't work exactly the way he wants it to work. But he's got to a stage where he can make a joke out of it now. And that's become a better routine than being serious all the time. But it's all about practice. And on the day, who knows what's going to happen. And the 7-second rule, have you heard of this? To make an impact. When you meet somebody, you've got 7 seconds apparently to make an impact. So it could be asking a key question to start, put some music on to get the mood going, paint a negative picture and offer a solution, make the audience feel a little wobbly but safe. And I think that's an interesting bit. I sometimes start off and say to an audience, I've got something that's going to scare you. And when I tell you, it's going to shock you. And I wait a tumbleweed moment, and I say to them, you won't believe it, but I'm 61. And they start laughing. And then I said, now you might be thinking I'm 50 or even a bit less. But when I walk with my hips and knees, you might think I'm 81. And I was talking about well-being. So well-being, you can't see somebody if they're fit and healthy. There could be something else going on. But it's a bit of a catch at the start, isn't it? You don't want to be just, here we go, here's my stuff. Have you got it? See you later. You want to get them at the start. And this is where, and Jenny brought me attention to this one. And there's lots of stuff on the internet, but this one here was quite good. And it's the ways to capture an audience's attention. And again, I'm not going to go through exactly all the stuff here, but there's some good phases to go through. But again, I would reiterate, keep it simple, but also keep it what you're comfortable with. Don't try to put something too much into it. So you can have the multimedia going on. You can tell a little captivating story, the metaphors. You can ask those questions. And I think that's important, but grow it over time. Yeah, certainly grow it over time. I'll come back to this in a second. So this is Anne Ricketts, and she talks about having a hook, something to start a question to get them interested. And often people paint a negative picture. So they might say something about the world is going to end and we have one chance to save it. And today I'm going to tell you about this one chance we've got. It gets people's attention, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, what can we do? You know, and then transition to the topic. I'm going to give you some details today about, for instance, climate warming, how individually we can start this ball rolling in the right direction. And when you've finished in 30 minutes time, you will have more tools than you do now to start this process of change. So you give them that excitement that something good's going to happen and they take away something. Then you might just say, well, who am I? Why am I talking about this? I've had 35 years public speaking. I often get asked to speak in this country and sometimes overseas. And it's something that people recognize when you get a bit older sometimes, you've got something that people want to hear. The benefit to the audience, as I mentioned before, why am I going to take 30 minutes of your life away? Because after 30 minutes, we've got a deal that I'm going to give you some tools and strategies that will make you more effective as a public speaker. And again, for this presentation, you can look at that from Anne Ricketts and look at her specific details of that journey as well. So we're trying to cater for all your needs here, and we can't always give it at one shot, but there's something to go and look at afterwards for sure. Thanks for that, Jenny, for providing for me. It was interesting.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, PS, call to action. Don't be scared to go ad lib sometimes. And when I say that, I mean that if things don't work or a point gets elaborated and you lose some time, go off on a limb. Be careful of the time, as I said before, to finish on time, but don't be scared to go off your plan a little bit. And again, when I was younger and less experienced, I was very rigid on my timings. I always finish on time, generally speaking. I certainly do now. But even now, I can afford a few meanders if it's relevant to the audience. Because if I don't take their interaction and I don't meander with them, it shows that I'm not interested. So I think when you go to an audience and relate to them and then still finish on time, I think they get, without even thinking about it, this guy, he was in control here and he knew what he was doing and it seemed seamless. So again, that's probably for somebody who's got some experience already. And don't be scared to go off lib a little bit. And that's the video there from Anne Ricketts. Okay, only 4 minutes of your time to be taken away from that one, which is not too bad. Let's look at a few key errors, and I'll come back into big screen again and we'll give you some more definites. So key errors. If you're doing from a PowerPoint, the text too small. Multimedia fail. Always happens at some point. Even the most successful guy, it was called the real David Cameron, and he made a career out of his equipment failing. That's an extreme example though. Reading from a screen or handouts without engaging the audience. Classic mistake that do not do that, please. It just shows that you're not at the level that you should be at. Starting late or going over time. We started bang on today at 1 o'clock, and everywhere I go, I want to be inclusive of people, but I'm saying we might have a soft start, but we're starting. And I think it's important to do that. Same with ending. speaking too fast and not allowing processing time. And sometimes I do repeat myself, like I'm going to do now, for you to remember a point. So remember those year 9 students who were very sharp, very confident, knew all the stuff, but they didn't let you process it quickly enough. Walking around the room can be good. It can be distracting. It's up to you. Get some feedback from your trusted friends or professionals. Was my walking distracting? Was I part of the entertainment, or was I part of the information? Moving on when presenting online. So online backdrops, when it moves in and out, I don't like that one. Break up content learning styles. So it's different styles of learning. We ask some questions. Normally at a bit longer, I'll probably show some videos here. I'm looking for some empathy and engagement and clarification. So we talked about your barriers before, getting that empathy and connection with you on your side of it. And again, keep those questions coming in so I can demonstrate number 7 as we go along. Don't be scared. Well, be scared of being a total sort of geek and knowledge transfer. Once you just transfer knowledge, anybody, a robot could do that. So be careful, that's not one of your problems. And the older I've gotten, I hopefully give knowledge, but for me, it's always led by engagement. And if you have no hooks or intrigue, no link story or metaphors, and it's too complex, they might want this information, they might need it, but they haven't absorbed it because you've been too black and white with it. Yeah. Right. Okay. What are we doing for time? We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. Keep your questions coming in. Very quickly on communication. If you think words are very important, you'll be sadly wrong, because words and communication only make up 7% of how effective we are as a communicator. It's your voice, your pitch, your tone, your speed of voice, but also your physiology, your facial expressions, your body language. Your face can hold, according to Paul Ekman, San Diego police forensic investigator who studied thousands of criminals' faces. He said there's 6,500 facial expressions you can make. So if you're thinking you've got a clear message with your words, but your face and your body is saying something else, and you're going too fast or you're hesitating, people can see that you're inauthentic. So it's how you look, it's not what you say. Very quickly, let's do some quick ones here. Britney Spears, teeth showing too much, eyes glancing sideways, large creases at the eyes. Is it authentic? Is it real? A few seconds to think. This one is totally fake smile. It's false. And people can read that from the smile. Next one, nice and quick for us. The finger and thumb on the chin, yeah? Straddling the mouth, looking away almost, like pensive. Is it a good place to be? Listener is making a decision. So it could be that you're weighing things up, but I'll give you a little clue here. Every time we touch the face, it's potentially a negative, okay? You could be coming across as condescending. Here's another one for you on the face. Bill Clinton and the nose rub. When he got impeached, they found that when he lied, he gave a split-second frown before he answered and touched his nose once every 4 minutes. So him touching his nose and that frown was he was lying. Be careful of touching the face. A quick one for you. This one, the child covering the mouth. It's like a lie's escaped. We've caught a lie. Now you can do it in a fun way. I shouldn't have said that. And that's good to animate your conversation, but be careful sometimes. Nice and quick. Here we go. That's okay to Westerners, money to Japanese, 0 to French, an insult to Turk and Brazilians. So when Jenny was speaking overseas, make sure you're familiar with the cultural language there as well. And crossing anything, let's not go for crossed, defensive or submissive, you're holding back. Okay, you're holding back. And this one's a classic, hands open, and it's called I have no gun pose. I have no weapon. So it should be very trusting. Depends on your face at the same time. Okay, I'm going to finish off in 5 minutes and we'll have some questions. Very quickly, body language. As Alan and Barbara Pease write books on this for many years, and they talk about different planes. So it's difficult to see me today because I'm sat down on the couch, but they talk about going through different planes to get, for instance, the start and a hook, go to the grotesque level, the low level, where this is a problem. And as you start raising your arms and generating gestures in your face and moving your body, you're going through better, more positive sort of connection phases to the very high one, that's ecstatic. So if I was doing this somewhere now, you know, I might say something about, I know again, you can't see all this, but I might go low and say, and put my head down a bit. The world is going to heat up too much in the next 50 years. It might become unbearable to live here. I won't be around, but many of the people in the audience will be. What can we do about that? And then I start moving the hands up a bit. There is a window of opportunity. If we take that window and look at what we're doing individually, come together collectively, and put pressure on the organizations and governments in the world, we have got one chance to take now. So going from low to high and changing my language, quite deep, quite sincere, more optimistic, more hopeful. And I think if you get good at that, you'll do it without knowing you're doing it. So very much, go back to that screen then. That was the planes. So those are some definitions for you, but lower it to start with, be negative, paint a bad picture, and slowly bring it up to the ecstatic phase, the future. We can do this, a better planet for us all. Now, if you can do this with some images behind you, that makes the message so much more powerful. And you can click on this without looking at it, knowing that each click gives you another part of your statement. If you ever watched Britain's Got Talent recently, there was a young guy on there, 7-year-old Amar, and he was talking to the audience and the images behind him were coming up and he was reading off a script. One part of it, and I'm not criticizing the 7-year-old boy, but he got it mixed up and the images didn't match with his voice. There was another older guy on there who was actually back to it and he'd done it from a prompt somewhere and it slicked into place beautifully. So whichever way you want to do it, but my best tip on this is know your stuff. Know which click brings what up and your voice goes with that slide. That's practice and preparation. It's more effective message delivery. So some good messages there, isn't there? If we're doing elevator pitches, very briefly, there's one online called the Harvard Business Elevator Speech, and it gives you some boxes to fill in and it tells you how to present something. But it's been short and sweet to the target. What's your product or service? Who you're offering it to? How do you make your money? Who is the company? What's your competition? What's your USP? An elevator pitch can be done from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Anyone 2 minutes is not an elevator pitch. And we did a lot of this with University of Central Lancashire, and the development when we filmed it was much powerful. That physical presence in the room, but the feedback, give them that feedback where they've seen they're doing something and they improve very quickly. Okay, I'm going a little bit fast. Just a little bit to finish off with job interview research. When applying for a job, which gender is more confident and applies for more jobs? He's got a quick answer for me there. Anybody know? You got 50% chance of getting it right, or maybe more these days. I don't know. Here we go.
Men from Emma.
Yes. If a male applicant thought he had at least 6 desired job criteria out of 10, he would apply. A female would often only apply if they had 9, or sometimes believe they had to have 10. So men tend to apply for more jobs when they had less qualifications or criteria. There's something about confidence and imposter syndrome there. What have we learned today? Confidence can't be ring-fenced. Like presenting, it must be practiced over time. Your face and body must match with your words. You must be authentic. Plan, perform, evaluate, know your stuff. Search for evidence that you have spoken well before when you get a bit nervous, and always get feedback afterwards. Good, bad, or ugly, take the feedback. Learn to enjoy the process. Want to do it, as I say, and don't touch your face. Okay. There you go. Over to you, Jenny.
Great stuff. I've just put in the chat a survey link for everyone to complete. That would be brilliant. There are a couple of other things to support around well-being for confidence and communication skills. And of course, any real concerns go to safeguarding there. We're coming back after a summer break in September to see you then. If anyone would like feedback on their elevator pitch if you'd like to practice one to camera. I know it's not to an audience, but if you'd like to do that and email it in to me, very happy to give people feedback on your elevator pitch. If you'd like to do that, please do. I'll put my email in the chat and everyone's got it. We're now at 2:45, so we're out of time. I would just like to raise one thing around Ellis's question on accent and authenticity. I think there, do slow it down, but being true to yourself and not changing your accent is the answer. We present as our authentic selves to be the most effective communicators. So I just wanted to say that. Finally, if there are no quick questions at the end, I'll just pause, give you a pregnant pause, Ross.
That's okay. Did I finish on time though, Jenny?
Just, we're 1 minute over.
There you go.
So it leaves me to thank everybody for joining us in this session. We hope that this has given you confidence to be brave, to try, and to enjoy it. Thanks for attending. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.